I mean, obviously, I think there are things like great haikus.
Hmm.
But a haiku is still just 17 syllables and
Yes,
three
yes.
lines. I have a friend, I don't know if you've seen on Cosmoetica, I mentioned his name is Bruce Ario. He
Yes,
has a
R.I.P.
documentary that was just premiered, and hopefully over the next few months, the DVD will come out.
Were you
Bruce,
involved with that?
I'm his literary executive, but I didn't make the film. I'm
Oh,
interviewed
okay.
in the film, but he wrote a 10-line thing called an aerial. I named it the aerial form. It's free verse, three stanzas of 3 3 3, and then a 10th line separate, a fourth stanza where the poem sort of just takes off. Now, he wrote a lot of doggerel, but his best stuff is great, and it very much mimics the form of the English sonnet. Um,
Hmm.
but now, what was I gonna say? Oh God, see, I
Well,
just
you're just you don't. I'm looking for the idiom. I can't come up with it, but you don't inflate the grade, right? For
no,
you,
no.
85 is 85. I'm not,
Well, but
I'm not
again,
putting this in
again,
the best terms, but I think you know what I'm
there
talking
are
about.
many roads to nirvana. If we have a poem that, let's say I have a couple of poems that I think are a 95, I'm going to be like, okay, now you can come to it by having written uh, a poem that sustains itself over 5 pages, something like that Custer poem that I mentioned. But
Hmm.
also, you could have just a dynamite sonnet, something like Archaic Torso of Apollo by Rilke, if you
Yeah,
get a good translation, not Robert Bly, but someone else.
fair.
Uh, and that's only 14 lines. That might be, now I think that's probably more a 97 or a 98, but again, there are no two things are going to be ultimately
Yes,
equivalent. I
right.
think
Yeah,
I
yeah,
believe absolutely that there are objective things. I can objectively say, for example, that Rilke is a greater poet than James Tate. That does
right.
not mean, though, that when he was 17, before he decided to cop out and just become a hack, he might have written something close to greatness. And that poem, I could probably find a Rilke poem that isn't as good as the best poem that
Yes,
James Tate
right.
ever wrote.
Yes.
But
This reminds.
on the whole, it's inarguable that
Yes.
Rainer Maria
Yeah,
Rilke
yeah. On
was
the
a
whole,
greater
yeah.
poem than James Tate, greater poet. Yeah, I'll give you another example. I was just recently. I've been trying to. I want to do this interview because I'm so sick and tired of American stupidity. I a guy I'm going to interview has
What American stupidity are you talking about, Dan? This is
all
a
general.
shining beacon on the hill.
Yeah, and this guy has a did a little 10-minute documentary thing on a guy who claims he saw Bigfoot. So then, of course, because I watched this, I get all these Bigfoot things, the Patterson Gimlin Bigfoot, thing,
Well, we
the
need the Dan Schneider Bigfoot novel, is what we need.
yeah, but the thing is, it's so obviously not real.
Yes.
I've done 5 or 6 shows on UFOs and this woman who flew past
Astral
Pluto
projection.
and
Yes.
whatnot. And it's such bunkum, but people don't want to come out and say stuff like that because everyone has a truth. And the funny thing is, it's everyone has that. It's not just the liberals or progressives that want to talk about trans rights. I've said to people many times is, wait a minute, you're telling me how weird it is that someone wants to cut off their genitals to become the opposite sex, but yet you believe in some sky wizard that created
Well,
everything and whatnot. I'm going to tell you this much. I believe I could find you a trans man, whatever you think about it, that truly believes that they should have been
yeah.
born the other
Yeah.
sex. Then you can show me any
Yes.
proof of
Yeah.
God. So don't tell me that person is off their rocker. Even if they are off their rocker for a different reason, it's not as
It's
egregious as
not that. Yeah, right.
being
Right.
you off the rocker by having a totally misconstrued idea of the cosmos.
Yes. Well, and what gets me is that they're very against the Joe Rogany MMA UFC types are very against trans people using human growth hormones like estrogen, but then they're the same ones that turn around and use steroids to
Yeah,
make themselves appear more masculine.
and and all of these people, even Arnold Schwarzenegger, I've heard him admit this made him feel good about himself, that he was finally strong, because he had a Nazi dad, just like Elon Musk, just like Trump. He had a Nazi dad, a literal German Nazi from Austria.
Yeah, it's hard to.
So in order to overcome the family shame, he felt shame. He had to build up.
Wow.
I mean, Schwarzenegger is like a Republican, but he's a liberal Long Island Republican.
Well, I was going to say I'd much rather have Arnold Schwarzenegger as president than Donald Trump, but that not to get into politics.
But here's the thing. I lived in Minnesota under Jesse Ventura, the pro wrestler. All these celebrities that think that they can do it suck ass. I mean, Jesse Ventura was a terrible governor, from what I've read.
Oh, I'm sure, right? Yeah. How could he be good? He's a wrestler. He knows nothing about politics. Yes. Let me ask you, since you do interviews, do you just cold approach people through emails?
Yeah, I mean, and then I'll have
pretty amenable.
I'll have a handful of things that I want to talk about, but I don't overplan interviews. I think the best interviews are not when you're the supplicant approaching the Buddha, but if you're just having a conversation eye to eye.